What's up, guys? If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Also, please smash that like button on the video and enjoy the show. Well,
everybody should have one.
You would know more than a lot of people. You've lived a hell of a life. I had a chance to read some of Becoming Bulletproof yesterday, and it's a very good book, by the way.
Thank you.
But what captivated me, I love the psychological stuff, and that's like right up my alley. But what captured me was the way you opened the book, because it was visceral and it was brilliantly written. But you talked about a day that even years later in America is still impossible to process. I can't imagine for you, but you talked about 9/11 and how you were working in the Secret Service office in Building 7 that day, and you described what ended up happening. You ended up helping a lot of people on the ground, and I believe getting a full award for that later. But can you just take me there that morning? Like, was it a normal day coming into work and everything kind of going exactly as planned? And then, what happened when you heard the first sound and knew something was wrong?
So it was a normal day. It was Tuesday. I remember the day. I believe it was a Tuesday, and it was super sunny. It was nice out. I went in early because I was chasing this guy who was a Frenchman, and he was committing all sorts of fraud here in the U.S., but he was outside of the country. And he was, I believe, in Canada. So I was trying to get him. So there's a way that if you're looking for someone, there's a way to peg them in the system. That way, once they cross the U.S. border and they go through customs, whoever they're going to will call you up and say, hey, I've got, John Pierre here. You've got a hit on him. Not that kind of hit. Not that kind of hit, but you've got him in the system. Do you want him? I'm like, yep, hold him. I'm coming in. So that's how that would work. So I was trying to put that in place for this guy that I was chasing, who was hiding out in Canada. But I knew he was going to come to the U.S. So I was like, I'm going to get him once he crosses the border. So that morning I went in and we had liaisons. So we had this guy that we worked with in our office. In the book, I gave him a pseudonym, but he worked with Customs Immigration, and I was sitting with him. I was like, hey, this is how we're going to find the guy. So we went in early to put this plan together to get this guy. So it just so happened that I was in Building 7, which was adjacent to the two towers. 7 collapsed at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. So it was the second highest building. But it was if you look at old pictures of the World Trade Center, it was the two towers. You had the smaller buildings that were connected to the towers, like World Trade Center 5 and 4. And then 7 was the next tower over. That was 48 floors. So it was like this, they were all connected. So that morning I was just there. And as we were talking, we heard the explosion from the first tower that was hit. And, I honestly, I did not... there's no way I would have thought it was a plane. I just thought, I heard an explosion. We looked out the window. The top of the tower was on fire because it was right next to us. You could see all the debris and stuff falling out. I remember thinking, wow, what an electrical fire. That's where my mind went.
Even with the explosion thought.
I didn't hear the plane. I just knew, I'm like, that's a big fire that's where my mind went. Terrorism wasn't even on the radar. Even though back in, was it 93, they had a terrorist attack.
Right, Ramzi Youssef.
That was a car bomb. And, not your mind, at least our minds at that point, we weren't really thinking about terrorism. I mean, there was no terrorism task forces. There was no JTTF. NYPD didn't do terrorism. Terrorism was zero zip zilch on any criminal justice platform. So that morning, you hear that. Of course, right away, we're thinking, the few of us that were in the office were thinking, okay, people are hurt. So we went to get our medical kits. They're called FAT kits, we would call them. They were kind of just like a paramedic in a bag, an ambulance in a bag. So we take them, we go downstairs, and as we're going down to go exit, the second plane comes. Now, I don't see the plane. My colleague saw the plane. So my colleague, I remember somebody revving an engine, and I'm like, what is that? And as the engine's revving, the plane comes in, hits it from behind and shoots out. And then I just remember my colleague grabbing me. Literally, he grabbed me by my collar and yanked me and then shoved me by the base of World Trade Center 7, literally slammed me into the back of the wall. And then there was a couple of us. So we were all agents there. There was maybe 6 or 7 of us. And literally we were just hunkering there, just shielding ourselves as the debris was coming down. So even just those explosions in and of themselves, they were debris, like chunks of stuff is coming down. It was killing people.
You said that you saw, I don't know if I misheard that, but when it went into the building, as it came out the other side, you saw like remnants of a plane coming out?
I saw no plane. I didn't even see the plane. My buddy, my colleague heard it, and he's the one who pulled me. I heard the engine revving. Like you could hear somebody hitting the gas. And I'm like, where's that coming from? So he saw the plane. But then after the plane, I got to tell you, if you paused to look up, you were dead. So I just ran. We all knew to run. But the steel was coming through. So it was either steel from the plane or steel from the building. And you didn't, it took seconds. So I didn't stop to do an assessment.
Sure.
I just took cover. And then when the rain of debris stopped, which it felt like it took a while, then we kind of removed ourselves from the back of the building that we were shielding ourselves from. And then we're like, holy fuck. And then you just like get the fat kits and regrouping and trying to figure out where do you go from there. And then at that point, actually, I ended up enacting an arrest right after that happened, because there was a guy, as we're getting our stuff together, then we're trying to get back into the tower. We can't go in through the front because the way we were going in is now blocked because that second plane came in and all the debris is crashing into the center, the square. When you had the two towers, if you look at it in a top view, you'll see there's a square in the middle between the two towers. And that's where they had music festivals, they did events. So now, but that was the way you got into the tower. So all that now is just covered in metal and steel and you can't even go through there. It's just raining debris, you'll die. And so at that point, there was some guy, I guess NYPD suspected him of being involved in the event, and they come over to me and to my partner because I guess they saw our shields and our guns, and they said, hey man, they're like, we don't know what to do. It's amazing because you'll watch it now and it's like a plane hits, then another plane hits, the building collapses, another building collapses, and it's done. You don't see the sheer chaos and calamity of that day. No images show that. In fact, when you watch news, and I do news now, they don't show all the people that were jumping. They were not one or two people. I mean, you're talking about dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of people just plummeting, like jumping out the towers because the towers are on fire. And, you see people sitting there going, do I burn or do I jump?
There's the famous picture of literally called the falling man, where, and it's unfortunately just one of many people who had to make that unconscionable decision. But you see this, and even today, it almost looks not real, because this happens. Like, people were forced to make a decision like that in some cases within 2 minutes of the building being hit, because it turned to up to 1,000 degrees or 2,000 degrees up there. And you see this almost like you can't really see their faces up close. I'm not sure how well you could see any of that being right there. I know you did describe one guy pretty detailed, so I guess
you could see them.
Okay, so you could see that, but like from our perspective, just watching it on TV, and I remember this as a very little kid seeing it and watching it all since then, it just looks like the calmness, the acceptance almost that so many people had fallen to the ground. It's eerie, and you can't imagine that situation and what that choice is like, but it was that bad up there that they're like, okay.
It was hot. I mean, I was on the ground and I could feel the heat from the ground. And so, you choose, do I jump or do I burn? I always think about that. I would have jumped. I am not a fan of fire. I've done fire training. They had us do a lot of fire training. And fire is, fire is rough. Like fire, I remember we do training. The fire wasn't even close to me. It was, further back, and you would feel like the fire was right on your skin.
Yes.
That's bravery, man. That's something else to be able to make that choice. You could even see the people. I think this was the hardest part, because before they started jumping, you could see them waving. They were waving stuff you could see just people gathered around the edges. And I remember thinking, where the helicopters? Get a helicopter up there. Get a helicopter. And I think one group that tried to go to the rooftop, the roof was locked. They couldn't even get to the rooftop. That's when people ask me about safety stuff, I always tell them, if you live in a high-rise building, do the walk all the way up to your roof and make sure that thing opens.
I think I hope I'm not remembering this incorrectly, but I think I saw in a couple different documentaries some of the helicopter guys talking about how it was like they tried, but it wasn't possible to get there because something that has to do with the temperature coming off the building would affect the rudders and they'd stop.
heat.
Yeah, they couldn't, like, even I remember the story about the people who were locked from the roof. They wouldn't have been able to get to them because there was so much heat rising off the building that,
no helicopters went. I didn't see a single helicopter try to get to the top of the towers. And then, it was probably the most helpless moments, in my life, to watch all those people die, and you're thinking, how can I not be able to do anything? And I did, and the people I was with, we did what even to this day, it's like, I feel like, was it enough? I don't know. And I remember at one point, there were these detectives, NYPD detectives, and they were with us, and they're like, all right, we're going to go in this way. And so I looked at my colleagues, all right, let's go with them. And I remember this very vividly. And I started walking with the NYPD detectives. And then I look over to my colleagues and none of them are going. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? Aren't we going to go with them? And one of the guys looked at me. He's like, no. He's like, where they're going, they're going to die the way they're going in. And I was like, well, shouldn't we try? And they chose not to go. And I remember standing there in the middle. It was a West Side Highway. I was like, do I go with these guys? Do I stay with my group? I'm like, I don't know these guys. And I decided to stay with my group because I knew my group. And they were like, look, we'll triage right here. We'll help people, because people were starting to pour out. I always wonder whatever happened to those guys. I always look at the photos, but it's hard because they were in civilian clothing, because they were dressed in civilians. And when you look at the police officers' photos, they're in their uniform.
Yes.
And so I always wonder if they died. I don't know.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.